Two.
Take two. Yeah, I don't want to sound silly. Uh, we are speaking with guitarist Paul Gilbert. The new album is "I Can Destroy." I love that pink guitar. I think Vinnie Vincent of the Invasion would be very jealous of that thing.
Oh, I think what was this guitar came from 1987.
Yeah.
I used to play it in Racer X, and it survived the travels of time, and it's still sounding great. There we go. Now we're ready to rock.
Now we're ready to rock. So let's start off with talking about "I Can Destroy." At this point, last Mr. Big album was 2014. These songs are they written for "I Can Destroy," or are these leftovers, or what makes these collections not Mr. Big songs?
I Can Destroy is all new songs, with the exception of the bonus track, which is a cover of Ted Nugent's "Great White Buffalo." That, of course, was from the '70s, and but all my own tunes are brand new, and I wrote a lot of the lyrics while traveling in a van through Italy, doing a guitar clinic tour, and I was sort of stuck in a van, nothing else to do, so a bunch of lyrics came out of my head, got home and turned them into songs. Although I must admit, "Everybody Use Your Goddamn Turn Signal" was written in Los Angeles. Oh, your sound just went off.
Yeah, no. I mute my microphone while I do that in case, just to keep my sound clear.
Okay.
But there you go. Yeah, so in fact, talk to me about that song because I watched the video. It's quite entertaining. Was that born out of a specific situation or just a general frustration?
Just general frustration of it's not. I think Los Angeles drivers are actually pretty good in general. There's just a lot of them, and that's the only way to get around there. And I actually recently moved to Portland, Oregon, so I can be more of a pedestrian. And I think, when you find yourself writing songs like "Everybody Use Your Goddamn Turn Signal," it's time to get out of the car and be a pedestrian a little bit. So that was just a message to myself.
Now, you described the album as sounding as an electric brontosaurus dropped from a 40-story building. That was in Guitar World. What exactly sound-wise were you trying to go for? Because I've listened to the album, and there's a little bit of everything. There seems to be some jazz influence and some metal and some funk, and it really is a panoply of the whole musical spectrum. It's great. What were you trying to go for?
Well, about the electric brontosaurus, my main guitars that I've got over there is sort of this guitar upside down.
Right.
And this part to me, sort of looks like some kind of electric brontosaurus. Don't worry, I'll get it out. So that's where that came from. And I remember, when you're a musician, you have to do the interviews with people. What's your new album like? And rather than having some boring answer, I thought I'm just going to describe it like it's the most unbelievably, ridiculously over the top thing in the world. So I came up with that quote of, it sounds like an electric brontosaurus dropped from a 40-story building onto a giant piece of aluminum foil, amplified into a Marshall stack. So that's just me being silly. But when it comes to the music, there's a lot of different things. There's the title track is definitely in the metal vein. There's some more bluesy things. There's an acoustic ballad. There's some things that actually came from listening to jazz. Some things that came from listening to, even like gospel stuff. Although I'm not a gospel expert, I'm listening to a lot of people like Nina Simone lately. And classical, gets in there as well. So it's, it's a mishmash of the musical soup that's always being stirred around in my brain.
Yeah, so you mentioned that when you do interviews for this, we talk about the normal stuff. What's the album sound like? Let me go somewhere else then. Mike Varney of Shrapnel Records. He wrote a column years ago that described you as basically being the next guitar god, the next guitar hero. What has he meant to you in your career?
Oh, well, it was my first connection with the music business. I sent a tape to Mike when I was about 14 or 15, and he responded right away, very positively, very encouraging. But at the same time, he would immediately say, "Well, you sound pretty good, kid, but listen to this." And then he'd have like unreleased recordings of Yngwie and Sean Lane. So, he was just Mike loves music. He loves the guitar, and he's actually a great player himself. And so it was a very inspiring figure in my life. Although I got to say one Mike Varney story, which is I love. Um, Maybe I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I did a concert at the NAMM show, which is a musical instrument show in California. Happens every year, and I was the featured artist for Ibanez Guitars, the company that I've been working with since 1987. And it was my year. You know, they put up big posters of me. You know, I was the featured person, and to celebrate, I reformed Racer X for a special show. I had my solo band playing. You know, all the guys in Mr. Big came to see the show, packed audience, and Mike flew down to be the MC. You know, a great honor to have him there as well. And so, before the show, I had like a brief sort of quiet moment with Mike backstage, and Mike just looked at me and he said, "Paul, you've done so much with so little." And I thought, you know, I kind of completely agree with that. That, you know,
Right.
Mike has known me since I was, you know, 14 years old, and I'm just this kid from rural Pennsylvania, you know, and I've just been working hard and plugging away, and you know, it's not like I was, you know, was born with a great voice, or, you know, I don't have the Johnny Depp, you know, chiseled cheekbones, you know, I'm just this goofy kid from Pennsylvania, and here I am, you know, top of the bill, and you know, having a successful career for 30 years. So, you know, as much as I was like, "Hey, what do you mean by that?" I was like, "I know exactly what you mean, and you know what? You hit the nail right on the head." It's amazing how much I've done with so little.
Yeah, and he nailed it. Now you mentioned Yngwie Malmsteen. Your playing has been compared to Yngwie Malmsteen. You've done the G3 tours and stuff. How do you, when you get into a situation like Mr. Big, decide when to let go and how to play for the song?
I think that's always been my instinct. And actually, in like the, you know, the Shred Big Hair days, I think I got some criticism for it. I remember the first time I did an interview in Germany, one of the questions was, you know, "Paul, why is it you listen to Van Halen, Yngwie Malmsteen, Vito Bratta, you know who they are, you can tell their style. You know, why is it you have no style?" You know, and I thought, what does he really mean? You know, I mean, the interviewer's, you know, English was not his first language. So I thought, you know, maybe he means something else. Maybe this isn't an insult. And I began to think, you know, well, I play for the song. You know, we do a song like "To Be With You." I'm not going to do my Phrygian dominant, you know, scale ripping, you know, face melting runs in that song. They don't fit there. And as a music fan, I'm a fan of, you know, I grew up wanting to be like the Beatles, Elton John. You know, I'm a pop fan, and later on, I got into Led Zeppelin, and that led to Van Halen, that led to Yngwie. So, you know, I didn't start out wanting to be, you know, wanting to fight invisible pirates with my guitar. You know, I started out wanting to be, you know, a pop singer, and then just sort of, you know, I was always better at guitar, so that's where I ended up. And you know, I love playing fast. I love the athletic aspect of it. But you know, at my core, you know, I'm a kid who had, you know, the radio on in the '70s, listening to Neil Sedaka.
Right. Let me move on to Mr. Big for a while. You left the band, or the band left you. I mean, yeah, you know, 96, 97. Why did you want to go out on your own and not rejoin them when they decided to let's do this thing again?
Oh, well, the first 8 years of Mr. Big was a great and really intense period of time for all of us. It was we kind of made a decision that we wanted to establish the band. We wanted to stick with it through thick and thin, and so we really didn't do anything else. I mean, I remember I even got married to my first wife during that time, and like the next day, I went back on tour. You know, it's just like no time off ever. We were either in the studio, on the road, doing promo. That was just, you know, and the great part of that is that we did exactly what we set out to do. We established the band. We had, you great album sales, toured all over the world. It was living the dream. But at the same time, by the time 8 years has gone past, it drove us all insane, or I'll at least speak for myself. I was like, just I got to do something else. And a few years passed, and the band was thinking about getting back together, and I not only was I not ready to get back together, but my solo career was doing really well in Japan. So, there was no reason to want to quit doing something that was doing very well. Of course, in the States, I wasn't really focusing on that, and there wasn't the time for it. Grunge and all the alternative stuff had sort of taken over, and what I was doing was very different than that. So, I was just sort of playing where people were responding well to my music, and that was Japan and Europe and South America.
So why the change of heart years later? Why did you finally decide, okay, it's time. I need to go back to these guys?
Oh, well, it was sort of as simple as that. I mean, we kept in touch once in a while. I'd see Billy at the NAMM show, and I'd run into Pat at rehearsal studio where we both would hang out. And so actually, I think I did a solo for Billy's solo album, and we just had a good time working together on that. And then I invited Billy and Pat to come play at one of my shows, and just sort of gradually came together organically. And everything we did, and on that small scale, was really fun. And to me, that's what sold it. Is if I can get excited about it, if it's like, oh, this is going to be fun and the music's going to be great, then I'm in.
Yeah, and then now you mentioned Pat. He, of course, was diagnosed with Parkinson's. How has that affected you personally? Because knowing your friend has this, and then, of course, what does it mean for the band?
Well, at the time, Pat had been, sort of having this inner struggle with his drumming, and none of us could tell. It was something where we'd be playing and we'd go, hey, everything's great, and then after we'd finished the song, Pat would be going, oh man, I'm really having trouble. Maybe there's something with my gear, or he was trying to figure it out, and just gradually it was getting worse, and finally he was able to find out what it was. So and it was devastating for him, and I think we, and of course, cared about him as our friend and our bandmate, but we wanted to support him and find out. We wanted him in the band. We thought that would be the best thing for him. Just from a emotional level, to have him still working, still doing what he loved. And we didn't really know what he was able to do. And I don't know if he did either. He was really down for a while, and I think really didn't feel he could contribute much. And we just said, Pat, whatever you can do, we want you there doing it. And so we, got a rehearsal studio. We said, come down, we'll figure out, if you can't play the whole set, maybe we can get a guy to come and play a couple of the faster tunes or something. But if you can sit in on anything, sing, we just want you there. And so that's what ended up happening. We did a huge Japan tour. Pat played drums on some songs. He sang on everything. He was there on stage with us. And the audience, we didn't make it a secret. They knew what was going on, and they supported him so much. And it I think that really helped turn him around emotionally. And last time I saw him, I'm living in Portland, Oregon now, but I saw him in LA, and he seemed to be doing great. So I think that's the main thing. I mean, nobody's, we're human beings. None of us are indestructible forever. But when you deal with something that really, knocks you back a bit, more than you can deal with on your own for a while. I'm glad we could help him out in any way that we could. And, I know I'm really proud of him for coming out of that dark place.
And I've got to say, if I may, I'm proud of the band that you invited him. I mean, you had Matt Starr there, but you also had him there because many bands or other people could have just said, well, okay, you can't play, we're going to move on. And you brought him out there anyway, which was very, very classy, exceptionally classy.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't really another decision to make.
Right.
It was just obvious. I mean, he's drummer Mr. Big. We want him there. He's our friend.
Yeah, and it was. So let's move on to something. I don't want to say more cheerful if you want, but a better topic. Uh,
Christmas. No.
Paul Gilbert's signature electric guitars on Ibanez, the Fireman series, and all that wonderful stuff. Um, Talk to me about designing your own guitars and finding those tones that you want, and how do you come up with the concept for the model that you want, and all that wonderful stuff.
Well, Ibanez has been one of the most amazing relationships of my life. Um, First of all, it's it's Christmas a couple times a year because these fantastic instruments come in the mail, and both their stock guitars that would be right off the rack, and also the new experimental things that the custom shops comes up with for me, and it's been both things that have been a total surprise that they'll just say, here, we're working on this, check this out, and also it's been things that I've worked out. I'll make it a sort of a rough sketch in Photoshop and show it to them and say, what do you think? Would this work as a, if it was brought to life in wood and metal? And it's great people and great instruments. And I've got two models that are actually very different from each other. One is a PGM, which is a little bit more normal of a shape. And it's just really comfortable to play. And a lot of I used that guitar for most of the Mr. Big era, and still use it today. With I've got a new version of one that's got a whammy bar that I like. And then the other one is the Fireman, which is again sort of an upside down version of this guitar. And that guitar is, it's kind of a thicker piece of wood, and just it's of course you can still shred people's faces off on it, but it's a little more built for tone. It's just a bigger body, bigger neck, and it's an unusual shape, which I enjoy just because I'm always trying to be different in some way, and that guitar definitely allows me to be different.
Yeah, it really does. So where do you go from here in terms of this album, I Can Destroy? Is there a tour coming up, or are you going to go out there with a band and bring these songs, or are you right back into the whole world of Mr. Big?
Both. I do everything. We've got a few Mr. Big shows coming up at the end of the year, but mostly I'm doing solo touring. I'll be doing a lot of shows in Europe. I think early next year I'll be doing some shows in the States with my solo band, which I'm excited about that because it's been a long time since I've actually done a solo tour. I mean, I've done once in a while show in LA or in Southern California, but I really haven't done a full-fledged tour. And I've got a guitar camp coming up called the Great Guitar Escape. That's in late July. And I've got my online school going all the time. I just finished over 4,000 videos for the students at my school, and that's it'll be 5,000 before you know it because I'm real quite busy at that school and having a great time with it.
In fact, talk to me a little bit about that, because back in the day, as we like to say, you had the Intense Rock series
Yeah.
of videos. What compels you to put these videos together? Because a lot of rock stars, they go live their, the rock star lifestyle, and they disconnect from the audience. You're there all the time. Like you said, 4,000 videos, the intense rock stuff from back then. What keeps you motivated to keep doing that?
Well, I wanted to be a rock star too, but somehow, the tour bus would pull up to the venue, open the door, and instead of the girls in bikinis, there'd be a bunch of guys who wanted guitar lessons. And so there's just always been a demand for it, and I enjoy it. I love. I mean, basically, to me, teaching guitar is just hanging out with musicians and talking about music and the instrument that I love to play. So it's a subject I'm really interested in. People respond really well to it, and it makes me feel like I can change the world in a positive way in the art that I like. And the style of teaching that I've done, I mean, those old videos, in a way, they were much more successful than I ever imagined they would be. But at the same time, I feel like I did a lot of damage with those videos because I was really showing off. And I was really just trying to show like I take a look at my technique. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I think a lot of people got enamored with like, oh, if I can do that, That's all I need to do. And there were those videos were not balanced at all. I don't know why they couldn't be. They were an hour long or an hour and a half long. That's not enough time to give anybody a balanced view of music on an instrument. That's what takes a lifetime. And so the kind of teaching that I can do now at my online school, I've had students there for 4 years, and I know them on a first name basis. I know what they sounded like when they started. I know what they sound like now. I know their accomplishments. I know their struggles, and that way I can really, I can really get into the details more in a more meaningful way.
You mentioned the love of the guitar. Let's go right back to the beginning. Where did it come from? I mean, was it an uncle or a brother, or where did you pick up the guitar the first time and go, okay, yeah, this is for me?
Well, I had my parents had all the Beatles albums, so I'd look at the pictures of the Beatles playing guitar, but I didn't really know what it sounded like. I mean, I knew my ears went to the vocals, and then there's this sound behind it. And then my uncle actually was and still is a fantastic rock and blues guitar player, and he just had such good vibrato. He just had such good control of the string, and he hit hard, and just had great attitude when he played. And although by the time I was 11 years old, I'd found a pretty good local teacher who showed me a lot of the things that you're supposed to know, the basic scales and chords. But listening to my uncle and being able to see him close up, that made such a difference, because I could experience the physicality, from just being, from being 3 feet away from when he played, and realize, like, oh, I mean, you got to really hit it. You can't just have a light touch. You got to beat that thing. And actually, when I do like these camps, that's I think one of the best things that I can offer is that really close up experience of where a person can get things that they're not going to get from a video. You're like, oh, I get a sense of the physicality of it.
Yeah, there you go. And let's finish with this. Racer X, the first band, I guess. You had Oni Logans on vocal at some point. You got Bruce Bouillet in there. Talk to me about that. Sort of what went right with that band, what went wrong with that band, and what does it mean to you in terms of your career development? Because it really was one of those important bands that when we look back 30 years now, we go, oh yeah, that band was bloody damn good. And yet you didn't have that commercial success. Talk to me a little bit about Racer X.
Uh, well, probably one of the most exciting days of my life as a musician was, I always think of our Racer X's third show, which this is L.A. It was the pay to play era, which maybe it still is. I don't know. But that was new to us. We all grew up playing in bars, and doing the 4 sets a night kind of thing. And all of a sudden, we're in LA, and going, like, what? We've got to pay to play? It's just counterintuitive. And we've got an album. Come on, we're recording artists. But that was the system, so we did it, and we promoted the show. And by our third show, we sold out the Troubadour, just to the rafters. I could barely get backstage, having to fight through the people crammed in there. And at that moment, that was we built that band from scratch. Nobody in the band, nobody knew us. It wasn't a super group. And so to take a band from like total unknowns to selling out the Troubadour and having people, go crazy, that was the first time I felt like, hey, I might be able to do this. This might actually work. And besides that, the music was great. The musicians were stunning. I should mention Jeff Martin was the lead singer for
Yeah.
all of our recording career. After I left, there was sort of some other permutations, but they didn't last long.
Right.
And it was. It was. I remember people called us, would put us in the speed metal category. And although we were metal and we played fast, I never really thought of it as speed metal, just because harmonically we weren't doing what most speed metal bands were doing, which is more of the sort of dissonant, that kind of chicka-chara, that wasn't us. I was stealing Cheap Trick chords, I was stealing.
I want you to want me.
Yeah, I was stealing chords from Todd Rundgren, so I think harmonically we were more sophisticated, or at least more '70s AM radio, but that backed with the most amazing double bass drummer and huge guitars and really frightening tear your face off harmony guitar solos, and Judas Priest style vocals. So it was still like, I mean, I guess another term that's been phrased is it was melodic metal, but we were kind of too fast for melodic metal, maybe too melodic for speed metal. So we were sort of in that limbo in between somewhere.
Yeah, I think you were like the precursor to like symphonic metal, if anything.
Yeah.
It was a great band. And so why do you think it didn't get to that next level of becoming an arena act? Was it simply just the crowd wasn't ready yet? We were still into Poison and to Unskinny Bop, and we just weren't ready for what you guys were doing. I mean,
Well, I think this is probably true of any era. Is music is not only the sound; it's also the visual.
right.
And there were a lot of bands that looked better in their spandex than we did. So I remember, the two big bands in LA at the time were Racer X, and the other big band was Warrant. And I remember at the time we were going like, Warrant, those guys, they can barely play a solo, and I don't think they did play any of the solos in their first album, but they had better hair, and they worked out like choreographed moves on stage, and we actually put on a pretty amazing show. We had the pink guitars, and we had we did a fair attempt at having the big hair,
But did you have the white leather?
but we didn't have the white leather. So that's the thing is the visual trumps the trumped the musicianship in that case. And who knows, if we would have stuck at it, I'm sure we would have done something. But we would just always remain this indie band, and I think we were all frustrated that we, were being left behind by the image bands.
In fact, does that bother you? Because you are a great, great, great musician. Does it bother you, though, that there is a visual aspect to it? Or do you accept that as being part of the parcel, that there is a visual presentation? I mean, a band on stage that's boring, regardless of how exciting the members are, still a boring band, right?
Well, I mean, it's good that there's the freedom to emphasize whatever part of the arts you love, and I think that the bands that have this amazing visual image genuinely love that. They probably look at their photos and their videos and go like, "Wow, this is look how cool we look," and that's there's nothing wrong with that. And at the same time, I wouldn't expect Alan Holdsworth to come out and have be with a wireless guitar rig and spinning around in circles and and fighting invisible pirates. So it's everybody's got their own personality, and to me that's what being an artist is about. Is
Right.
You bring that combination of things, and human beings are visual creatures, so there's a certain advantage if it's sort of dumb luck, if the visual part of it happens to be your forte. That might work out really well. Whereas if you're really focused purely on the sound, you're going to have an audience of musicians and people that are into that more sophisticated art. But you have to do what you love. And to me, as long as I'm able to, I've been able to pay rent and have a great guitar collection for 30 years. So there's nothing I can complain about.
Nothing at all, actually, and that's why I normally don't do the Skype video, because I have a face for radio, not not for the visual thing. But there you go. I Can Destroy is out. It came out actually in Japan in December. Just quickly, was there any adjustments made between the Japanese release and the North American release?
Well, the bonus tracks are different.
Okay.
Yeah, here it's Great White Buffalo by the cover of the Ted Nugent song. And in Japan, it's one of my own tunes called My Sugar.
Okay, but in terms of sonically, you didn't remix or remaster or do
Oh, no,
any
they should be the same.
Same album. And on that, speaking of visuals, my next interview in about 20 minutes is the visual director for Madonna. So I will... there you go. Great pleasure, Paul. I've followed your career for many, many years. I've been a Mr. Big fan since the beginning, from, To Be With You and all that wonderful stuff. And it was a great pleasure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Great talking to you as well. And rock and roll.
There you go. And let's see that pink guitar one last time.
Oh, let's see. And we'll do some, everybody use a goddamn turn signal. There we go.
Thank you, sir.
Later on.
Cheers.